So at this point, I think that probably everybody's already heard what the sentencing for Wade Wilson is.
Count 1, first-degree murder of Christine Melton. The defendant is hereby sentenced to death. Count 4, first-degree murder of Diane Ruiz. The defendant is hereby sentenced to death.
That's that double DP, and we ain't talking about no donkey punch. But the question that remains now is, what is his life gonna be like on death row? I know that there seems to be a whole lot of people out here on the streets that have some sort of weird love for Wade Wilson, but I'm gonna tell you right now, in prison, everything is black and white, and nobody is gonna have any type of love or respect for this dude at all whatsoever. He is going to have a very tough time while he is locked up, which you can tell already because of the fact that he's been doing all his time in Lee County Jail in protective custody. But we're gonna get down to the nitty-gritty, vulgar, violent details in today's video, so buckle up, Buttercup, and let's go! First of all, being on death row isn't like being anywhere else that you could possibly go inside of a prison. Only the worst of the worst of the worst are there, and these are people who have absolutely nothing to lose. Like, what would you do? The state's already gonna kill you. Your fate is sealed unless you happen to get off on an appeal, which doesn't really happen that often if we're really honest with ourselves about it. But the appeals process can be entirely lengthy. In fact, in the state of Florida, the average time that somebody spends on death row before their execution is 22.8 years, which is actually less time than a lot of other states. Florida is about that business, y'all. The first thing that you need to understand about something like this is that you are basically in solitary confinement. That means that you are going to have a whole lot of cell time and a whole lot of isolation. They don't want to give you access to other inmates, and they don't want other inmates to get access to you. That's for their protection, and in cases like Wade Wilson's, for his protection as well. So let me explain to you guys why Wade Wilson is going to be such a hated person in prison and why he's in PC in county jail right now. Now, first off, Wade killed 2 women. People do not like people that kill women in prison. On top of that, he has had multiple sexually based offenses, and he might not have got convicted, but still, that stands on your record, and when you come out as a woman killer, they're not gonna assume that you are innocent just because you beat those charges. Wade also went out of his way to testify against another man that addressed him trying to get him to do a murder for hire plot on the witness in his case. In this case, it was his baby's mama that put charges on him for domestic abuse, and he wanted to have her killed and offered Wade $200,000 if he could have his people on the streets take her out, and Wade took that straight to the state's attorney, trying to cut a deal for himself, and he even testified against this dude in court. Now, if all of that was not enough, just on its own, the fact that he is in protective custody, people in general population hate people that are in protective custody. They think they're weak, they think they're punks, and they become immediate targets. If you put yourself into PC, you are a PC case and you are considered scum. So let's hear a little bit about how hated inmates on death row are actually treated.
Everybody on this row has been convicted of murder,
yes,
of one kind or another. But you are discriminated against for what? Because of what you did.
You heard it when you came in. Baby killer, and all the ranting and raving, and the constant being called Susie, and being attacked, and having urine squirted on you, and having spit in, and having dope, drugs, and chemicals put in your food, having semen put in your food, having bleach put in your food. That's not good. You have to understand that when you have bleach put in your food, you're not liked. Due to this situation, I'll probably have to live the rest of my life in isolation. Because I know that if I go out in population, I'm a dead man.
How do you manage to cope with such rampant hostility?
It seemed like sometimes death would be a better relief.
Damn, that sounds rough! He deserves it, though. Now, unlike other states, nobody in jail in Florida is in any rush to get their ass to prison. Because in most states, jail is much worse than prison, but in the state of Florida, that is not necessarily true. Wade, on the other hand, just this morning did everything that he possibly could to make sure that he goes to prison as soon as humanly possible.
Breaking news, Wade Wilson just faced a judge again after he was sentenced to death, but this time on other charges he was facing.
Today, a judge accepted a 12-year plea deal for Wade Wilson on charges for trying to smuggle drugs into jail last year. The state dropped other charges he tried to escape jail in 2020. All of this comes 2 days after a judge sentenced Wilson to death for killing 2 Cape Coral women, Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz, in 2019. The state attorney's office says the purpose of making Wade Wilson take a plea deal this morning is to get him to death row sooner.
So basically what happened is that Wade just pled no contest, which is the same thing as pleading guilty, to charges of trying to sneak illegal narcotics into the jail system. He used one of these Wade wifes that we hear so much about and had her hide stuff inside her vajayjay, trying to bring it into him to get it to him to a visit, and she ended up getting caught. So he pled guilty to that. They dropped the escape charges because, let's face it, that was the dumbest escape attempt of all time. And then he got 12 years for all of that when he just pled out so that he could get to death row soon. But people who go to death row are already going to be there for an incredibly long time, and it could be even longer with Wade due to a legal complication with this case, because they changed a law in the middle of this case while he was fighting it that allowed him to get the death penalty in this case.
Convicted double murderer Wade Wilson will soon head to Florida's death row. But he could be waiting there for several years, maybe even decades. I'm senior reporter Ryan Kruger, and a new state law could extend the appeals process for Wilson.
The 288 men and women currently sitting on Florida's death row will soon have a new neighbor after convicted Cape Coral double murderer Wade Wilson was sentenced to death.
The defendant in this case will now sit on Florida's death row as he awaits the death penalty. He will pay the ultimate price.
When asked by the judge if he wanted to speak, Wilson said,
"Not today. Later, when I come back, I will. Today, no, I won't."
Wade didn't testify in his own defense in this first case, but he just said that he's going to in the appeals, which his attorneys have already filed, which means that all of these Wade Wilson groupies are going to get to see a whole lot more of his busted out teeth. Ew! Meth mouth!
But Wilson could end up staying on death row for years. Wilson's attorneys have already said they intend to appeal the case, in large part because the jury recommendation for the death penalty wasn't unanimous.
Why is that jury not being unanimous important? Because up until 2022 in the state of Florida, you had to have a unanimous jury recommendation for the death penalty to be able to execute somebody. But in 2022, they changed that law, and all they need is 8 out of 12 people. But will that help him in appeals? Honestly, probably not, but anything can happen.
Florida has also been slow in recent years in executing people. No one was put to death between 2020 and 2022.
Now in 2023, Florida started executing people again, and they went hard. They executed record numbers for a year. But so far this year, they have not executed anybody, but they're starting up again next month. Now I'm just gonna be honest with you guys, as horrible as that treatment and conditions of death row sounded from that dude who was telling us about it, it is gonna be much worse for Wade if he ends up in general population. It's safer for him in there in the death row where nobody can get to him. He is going to have the worst time of his entire existence if he gets put on a pound with any of those gang members that already have a green light execution on his ass. This dude is cooked no matter where they end up putting him or what he does at this point. As far as I'm concerned, if it was me, I would just man up, take the damn death penalty that I earned, and go quietly into the night and quit being a little punk bitch about it. But what do you guys think about all of this? Let me know down in the comments. I appreciate you hanging out with us again today. It's big love for everyone in the chat. Thank you for being a part of this community. And until the next one love, baby. Be good or be good at it. Well, I'm all alone on death row, and these other inmates hate me. They bring me my lunch trays, and my food is covered in shower babies. They put semen in my food. They put semen in my food. They put semen in my food. Bitch.